Welcome into the Blurred Wire. We are still discussing some of the older Mad Max movies. Because Furiosa is still in theaters. I saw a latest review for Furiosa, and it says the Furiosa movie epic by George Miller has officially run out of gas. And like it hurt my heart. It hurt my
Ooh,
heart. Yes.
but what a good tagline.
I
What
know.
a good
Like
tagline.
I'm impressed, but I'm sad. But of course, it's your host, Will Rose, for the Blurred Wire, and my co-host Ty is doing great as always. Tell the people what's been going on, Ty. How you living?
Um, I've been living great, my man.
Great.
It's been great over here in Florida recently. 100 degrees.
I was gonna say,
Walk to your car, you melt into a puddle on the way.
I was like define great because I was just there a couple of days ago, and I remember walking to the car and being like, "Wow, I am glad to be going back to Charlotte after this." I mean, it's pretty hot in here, Charlotte too, but it's a different kind of heat.
Yeah,
Like
it's
I could go outside for a run this morning and not be melting. Like it's like I think it just hit 80 up here.
as a true blue Southern boy. It's not the heat, it's the humidity.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So well, stay cool down there in Florida. And as hot as it is here in Charlotte and as it is in Florida, it's probably not nearly as hot as it was in post-apocalyptic Australia, which is the segue I'll use to get into the film.
Solid, solid.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. It just kind of came to me, you know how it is. So we're talking about Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, which is the last movie in the Mel Gibson portrayal of Mad Max until after that, obviously Tom Hardy took over the role in Fury Road, and then Anya Taylor-Joy took over the role in Furiosa of Furiosa. So, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. This film is really notable for a couple of reasons. I mean, I think it's still a solid film. I think often it becomes the one that, critically at least, critics usually view this one as the weakest out of the three. And I think that's just because he set the bar so high with the Road Warrior. This one introduces Tina Turner, who
Yes.
actually did a fantastic job.
So
Because,
surprised when I first saw her.
right? Like, my mom absolutely loves Tina Turner. So, like, I was raised on a lot of her music. And I was like, oh, wow, look at her go. Look at her go. Like, I was like happy to see her. But from the perspective of a fan, what did you think about Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome?
I think I had stated before in a previous video that I really enjoyed this movie on a level similar to Road Warrior
Hmm.
before, and that was going based off of the original time I had seen Beyond Thunderdome. Having rewatched it for this video and having watched all three of them so close together, I don't really know what past me was thinking because uh, I do not really care for this movie that much. Um, it is good, but there's no car action until the very end, and that's the whole reason I tune in. Um, I think there's other things in here that work that make it good, but I certainly do not think it is peak. It is weird. It is weird
Hmm.
in so many places, but I really didn't need Mel Gibson to play what Peter Pan for half the movie with the Lost Boys.
Yeah, it was different. He definitely continued to lean into the weirdness. My thing is like why it feels like he should have. I mean, I guess he didn't want like the car action to get old, which obviously you don't want that to happen in your film franchise, like Fast and Furious is experiencing. But it's like it feels like George Miller kind of leaned into the weirdness, like, oh, these two movies that I made before were really good because of the weirdness. And it's like, no, they were really good because of the car action. Like that was the
Mhm.
part that made them iconic. Kind of need you to lean into that more. And
Mhm.
Mad Max Fury Road, he kind of balanced the two out because, like, again, if you take away the action of Mad Max and Mad Max 2, even if you take away the action of Fury Road, they're just really weird movies.
Mhm.
And it's like,
Yeah,
why am I watching this? What is
yeah.
going on? But then you see stuff blow up and you're like, oh yeah, 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 okay, we're back. So like I think that's the only way you could describe Beyond Thunderdome is there's a lot of talking, there's just some general weirdness going on, and it's like, where are the
Yes.
cars? Where's the blowing up? Where's the so
I
um
I am a very strong weird apologist. Like I will give a movie a lot of credit, even if
mhm,
it's not that great, if it makes some bold choices and goes in very creative, unique, weird directions. Just because I love to see that creativity on screen. And this is certainly an evolution of that. We saw a little bit of it with Road Warrior, with some of like the character designs and the vehicle designs, but here they really go all out with the citizens of Bartertown. Like everyone is is like a standout that you were like, how, whoa, okay, yeah, all right, man.
mhm.
And everyone is like that. And I absolutely love that. And even without having vehicle action for the first half, I could still like, okay, this isn't what I go for Mad Max, but I can be here for it. Halfway through the movie, this movie kind of dies for me.
Yeah, and I think that's an accurate way to put it. Um like I said, still very solid film. And it kind of feels like George Miller, like when George Miller made this film, you could tell he wasn't wrapping up a trilogy. He was trying to just put another installment on. Like you could
Mm-hmm.
tell he wanted to keep going. Like this film, like a lot of movie trilogies, that third one will try to wrap up the narrative, even if it's like a trilogy that's intended to go on, like the Kingdom of the Planet, like the Planet of the Apes franchise. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you got Rise, Dawn, War was kind of like the wrap up to that trilogy. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure when we get the sequel to Kingdom and the sequel to that one, it'll kind of wrap up this trilogy, even though it's going to keep going. But Beyond Thunderdome definitely doesn't feel like that. It feels like just like
Yeah.
another tick in the chapter. And so I don't know if maybe it would have been better if Miller kind of chose to do like a more of a wrap up storyline or something like that. I don't really know. But it definitely felt like like you could tell he wanted to make more of these movies. And I don't know, like you said, the fourth one, it wasn't really because this movie like bombed or anything, why he didn't get Fury Road made until like 40 years later. It just kind of was in, or no, I guess it was 20 years later. No, no. Yeah, 20 years later. Um 30 years later. Ooh, math. It was
Right
just
in the
kind of like
middle.
right in the middle. It was just kind of in like development hell for a long time
Yeah.
on his fourth Mad Max movie. And then I guess he decided to go do Happy Feet, which is still so funny. But he realized it's the same director. But anyway, I'm like, who made that decision? Like, hey, I have this movie called Happy Feet. You know who we should get? You know who did those Mad Max movies? George Miller. Yes.
That's the energy I want to see.
That's the guy for these penguins
In in my
dancing
in my head canon, they are canonical. Like they're all in the same universe. It's just
somehow.
Happy Feet is over in the Arctic while Mad Max is in Australia. Like to me, that's what plays in my head.
The two
It
different
makes me very
societies collapse in a different way. And Happy Feet, they deal with it by dancing, and in Mad Max, they deal with it by exploding cars in Australia.
happy.
Um,
Yes.
so
Maybe we should do Happy Feet next. That will
I'm
be
seriously considering it.
Our George Miller
Hmm.
roundup.
Every time I listen to podcasts, they're always laughing so hard that this is the same guy that did Happy Feet, and it still just gets me to this day. And I
It's a
kind
good
of
I
forgot
enjoyed
where I
the
was going with
movie.
my point. Yeah, it's a great movie.
Oh,
Yeah, but like once I remembered Happy Feet, I forgot what I was going.
you're talking about
But
it being like a trilogy, but it didn't feel
oh
like
yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
wrapped up as a trilogy.
Yeah, so like it definitely, and it kind of feels like, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it would have been better because like obviously he wanted to make more of them, and Fury Road was great. Um, but I think that's, yeah, it felt like just like another, like this whole movie I feel like could have been like a TV episode, if that makes sense. Like like in TV
Mhm.
episodes sometimes, like a Doctor Who episode, it'll be very episodic. They choose an adventure, he goes on it, comes back, goes on to the next one. Like this whole movie kind of feels more like a TV episode than like it does a movie necessarily, because it feels like this is just the next thing Max is doing. It doesn't really feel like hugely impactful. It just is like, here are some events and now it's over.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I also think it could have just been shorter,
Yeah.
like on the runtime. Like for a movie that's like an hour 45, um, it really feels like there's a lot of fat that you could have trimmed down because what really are you trying to tell? I mean, I see an attempt here of trying to grow Max more as a character and to maybe do a little bit of character work. But I don't think that's something that I really liked like Mel Gibson as Mad Max for. Like, I did not really care for Mel Gibson trying to learn that children are the future in this
Yeah.
movie. If
Yeah.
that makes
That's what you
sense.
mean. Hmm.
Like I don't think he brought anything to the table. I think it goes against to how much great character work he was doing in Road Warrior because of how little he talked, because of how focused he was. And I feel like there was almost like an attempt at that here with like the beginning, him being like just this like lone traveler, um, like a shoot first, ask questions later. He has this hardness to him that seems to soften by the end of the movie, and I get that for it working for the thematic purposes of the movie. It's just I don't know. I just didn't care for Mel Gibson in it all.
Yeah, which yeah, so it's like that character development. It's like we don't really need that from Max. So it definitely does kind of feel like Fury Road is more of a return to form, and I think maybe that's part of why. I mean, that's not partly why people loved it, but it definitely felt like a return to form compared to Beyond Thunderdome when you look at this one right here in the middle. Um, and thinking about all of this, it made me it made me think of a question. So because like I was comparing this movie and like I said, the weirdness that like George Miller really hones in on, and then compared to like Furiosa. Do you feel like Furiosa that just came out in theaters in Mad Max Saga? Do you feel like it was a little safe? Do you feel like it was too safe, safer than you anticipated? How did you feel about it in that way specifically?
Do I feel that Furiosa played things safe?
Yeah, seemed like it was a little safe.
Um, I wouldn't say play it safe. I would say if anything, he took really big risks with Furiosa
Hmm.
because he tried to in it it's funny, this may seem roundabout, but it all connects. Watching Road Warrior and then Thunderdome, it kind of feels like they both have like um analogous themes and like connection points to um Fury Road and then Furiosa, like in some of like the styling of it, and Thunderdome trying to be more story centric in its storytelling. And I think Furiosa does it so much better in that sense because he really tries to focus on a like a revenge based character based movie. And in a way, I can see some of that here in Beyond Thunderdome. And I don't like how it's handled. I don't think it's handled well, but
Mm.
more serious character growth, more a better integration of that heavy action style with this character growth that we see in Furiosa. I think it is pretty risky because it didn't work so well the last time. So for him
Hmm.
to attempt it again and to attempt it in a very unique way that spans like decades, that we see chopped up. We follow Furiosa in this like chopped up timeline a little bit. I think it's way riskier than just doing Fury Road 2, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, so I guess like when I refer to safe, I see what you mean that like it was riskier in that way because there's a lot of character development in Furiosa, which is not something the saga is known for at all.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
like at all. But I think what I mean is just like on the weirdness scale. Because I think I was
Oh,
expecting Furiosa, like it was still weird. Don't get me wrong. If you like not everybody will like this movie, and that's very understandable because it is a weird movie, but I was kind of expecting it to be weirder almost. Like I was
mhm.
almost expecting like not necessarily more from like Chris Hemsworth, but I was kind of expecting Dementis to seem more like demented for lack of a better word, when he just
Hmm.
kind of seemed more like jaded and like I mean, I guess he was still crazy, but like again, it's like compared to and maybe it's just because like Fury Road, like since Furiosa takes place so close to Fury Road, it's like it's hard to like make something weirder than Fury Road and have it not like drift into the realm of like satire. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
if you went weirder than Fury Road, you're almost getting to parody satire land. But it
right.
almost feels like if you don't get weirder as Fury Road, your next movie won't really hit the next level. You know what I mean? It's like,
I
where can
I
you go from
definitely
here?
I definitely see where you're coming from, seeing as like every Mad Max before had raised the bar a
Hmm.
little bit into how weird it is. I read it all as like Fury Road, it it cracked the formula. If we
Hmm.
think of it as him like experimenting and trying to find like the balance and the thing that works. Because I mean, remember, this whole series didn't even start post-apocalyptic. That
Yeah.
was a happenstance because of funding that
Yep.
they couldn't get enough people to populate cities. So this is all kind of incidental, and he just ran with it. And so I think he finally perfected the formula with Fury Road, and I think he just used it again in Furiosa. So yeah,
Hmm.
I definitely don't think he raised the bar in that way, but I think you're right that the bar is so high that
It's set. Yeah.
if you can, I think to just reach that bar again is still impressive, seeing as
Hmm.
most movies still don't look like that.
Yeah. And like again, it's like, the argument of like, did Furiosa hit that bar? Like, to me, it's always gonna seem less. It's always gonna seem like it's not quite that bar because Fury Road came out first. So like if Fury Road is like 100 for like the weirdness scale, which I definitely think it is like the perfect spot where like you can't really go any further than that, but it's like hit the peak. And even if Furiosa comes in at 100 as well, it's still going to seem more like a 90 because we saw Fury Road first. It's kind of like the whole um not necessarily a theory, but like the idea of like having to go bigger. But again, that's why a prequel really made sense because, technically you wouldn't really have to go bigger because this takes place before Fury Road. But again, all of this is kind of like speculation. Like maybe that's why it didn't do so well at the box office or hasn't done so well. I don't know. I just remember after watching Thunderdome and watching Furiosa, like arguably you could say that like Furiosa is definitely weirder than Thunderdome, and I think it is
Mhm.
too. But like the perception on it is different because we see Thunderdome as a lot weirder compared to Mad Max and Mad Max 2. But
Yeah.
Furiosa is weirder than Thunderdome, but we don't see it as weirder than Fury Road, which is why I'm like, did that affect its box office performance? I don't really know. I think there's a lot of factors going in on it, honestly.
I think something that really affects it for me is that the weirdness in Thunderdome, it doesn't feel like it enables or bleeds into the action very
Hmm.
much. Because like this is really not an action heavy movie at all. Like there is not much in that sense, which is fine. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. I just think of the world that you're living in. Like this is the Mad Max world. And I get that, on some like thematic level, they're trying to look towards like rebuilding,
Hmm.
society. On some thematic level, they're trying to not just sit in squalor, not just sit in the chaos, but to hope for something better in the future. And then
act on that, like work towards that. And I get that, but I don't think there was much in the way of that level of danger to begin with. Because even Bartertown, for the standard that even Road Warrior had kind of set up for the ruthlessness of the tribes of people across this world, was pretty tame, despite being
Mm-hmm.
as outlandishly like creative with like their civilization and their set designs and the way everyone dresses. It's relatively tame despite having like a big cage match death style way of handling
With the
conflict.
pig killer, uh, yeah,
And I think by having it not really having the weirdness not necessarily connect directly with the action like it did in Fury Road or like it did in Road Warrior, where like every car was super unique and it felt like they were bestial. And maybe that's the thing for this movie. I didn't feel like there was any bestial cars because every other one, I feel like that car feels like I'm watching an animal instead. And
yeah,
here we
exactly.
got
Yeah.
actual animals. We got camels and horses and pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, this isn't,
No.
this isn't, I don't
Yeah.
like this. I didn't like it.
And this is also before sound design like actually became like part of the movie industry because sound design didn't become a part of it until the 1990s because before you couldn't really go back in and add audio. You had to get it as you were recording. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
have that was before digital recording. So
Mm-hmm.
they had to do everything very analog. If you do analog, sound design doesn't really work. So, that's why Fury Road, Furiosa, when you talk about bestial cars, the sound designer can literally add whale sounds to the car's engine revving to help, like that's part of like that bestial. And so this is before
Right.
that, but even still in the first two Mad Max films, like the design of the cars still made them feel bestial.
Yeah. The
So
cinematography,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, it was missing a lot of that. And I think that that hurts it. While I still appreciate
Hmm.
how creative George Miller and his team were in some aspects, I think they kind of lost sight of the secret sauce that
Yeah.
makes this movie.
But then they capture it, 30 years later and obviously brilliantly did it. So before we go, I guess just if you want to take a second, because like we're at this point where Furiosa is pretty much going to be out of theaters next week. Um, I'm hoping that these podcasts may have helped it a little bit. I don't really know. Like I said, the movie's definitely not for
We
everyone.
got one person.
We
We
got one
got
person to
one
go see it.
person.
But what do you think? Do you think there's anything specific contributing to the box office? Its slump because like obviously people are going back to theaters this year, Dune Part 2. But there's a lot of movies that have slumped in Hollywood. So do you think Furiosa is like specific or do you think it's a bigger kind of thing around Hollywood as to why it kind of ended up slumping?
I I don't think it has to do with I truly don't think it has to do with Furiosa being Furiosa. I think it is more the unfortunate victim of a unhealthy industry right
Mm-hmm.
now. I think movies cost way too much to make, to the point that the levels of success needed are unattainable by 99% of them. Like
Yeah.
not every movie can be Dune Part 2
Mm-hmm.
in levels, or like Avengers Endgame,
Yeah.
or the first Avatar, or Titanic. You know what I mean? Like not every movie can be these huge ones that like, oh, we're setting the standard for opening weekends, or international opening weeks, or like most grossing of all time. Like that's these are records that should be not the standard for everyone to meet.
And I think streaming has changed a lot too. Like, if someone thinks that a movie, even for people that are invested in a franchise, and it's really funny because like if you look at this year, like this year has been all about franchises. There's
Hmm.
only been like one original movie that came out this year, and The Fall Guy. Everything else has pretty much been a sequel or a prequel or a continuation. I mean,
Hmm.
Bad Boys, Ride or Die, Dune Part 2, Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, Kingdom of
Hmm.
the Planet of the Apes is a sequel. It's like we're just kind of doing all sequels this year.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's part of it. Maybe people aren't as invested in the franchises as Hollywood thought they were. But then The
Hmm.
Fall Guy came out and nobody really went to go see that. And I think that's because people just figured like that's a movie to watch on streaming. Like I saw that and I was like, if that was on Netflix, Kate and I would watch it. But other than
Hmm.
that, I'm like, am I gonna go to the theater and see it? Not
Probably
really.
not. Probably
No.
not.
Yeah. And so I think like if you have a movie that kind of seems like it's more of a streaming movie, it's not going to do well in theaters. And I think that's the problem that Hollywood's having right now because they want everyone to buy all these streaming services. And but if someone's like not even if they think it's going to be on streaming, because again, it's not like I'm like the Fall Guy's probably going to be on streaming, so I don't really need to see it in theaters. I'm like, this looks like the kind of movie I would watch on streaming. So I'm just going to watch something like that instead of going all the way out to the theater.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of, and again, Furiosa is not like anything you would see on streaming. Like,
Hmm.
but I think a combination of like it's hard to attract new fans to like the Mad Max franchise. Like, you know, you
Sure.
cast Chris Hemsworth, you cast Anya Taylor-Joy, and Chris Hemsworth obviously is very popular and very big with the MCU crowd, but that's not the same kind of people that are gonna like Mad Max. Like, obviously, I love the MCU and I love Mad Max, but I'm a very different. I'm also like a movie buff kind of person, and so like even the actors that they cast may not have necessarily drew the crowd that they were expecting.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think it's just like a sign of you're right. The industry is very unhealthy, and I just hope that it finds a way to get corrected without hurting the little guys. Not okay, I don't want to call them little guys, but like you know, the executives are all going to be fine. I'm talking about the camera people, the grip operators, the boom mic holders. Like, hopefully, it'll happen in a way that isn't going to negatively impact them.
Yeah, if anything, the executives are probably a little too fine.
Yeah.
That's probably why we got here.
It's probably how we got accurate. Well, thank you
But
guys for joining us. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna second that feeling that yeah, when people are when the like the hands that make it work are struggling, everything's really struggling. So
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you guys for joining us on the Blurred Wire. We will catch you next time. And yeah, we'll see you again. Take
take
care.
care.